Welcome into King Wales album review party. Today we have another special one, another request. So guys, please keep sending them in. Sometimes it takes a minute, but we are listening to these albums, we are discovering new music, and we are reviewing it. And so today we are reviewing, well, first, before I say what we're reviewing, let me introduce and say hi to my co-host, Ty. How's it going?
It's going great. Thank you again, listeners, for sending in another submission. Regardless of the album itself, we're so happy that you're recommending and expanding our tastes.
Yeah, I get to explore new things. Like I feel like that's the coolest part, getting to explore new kinds of music and see like I wonder why this person suggested like this particularly project. So like this project that was just suggested to us was the album Good and Evil by an American rock band called Tally Hall. Now, I kind of have to offer like a little bit of a disclaimer because like when I saw the request and I was like, okay, Tally Hall, and I looked him up and I was like, this is a rock band. I was like, I'm not gonna know anything about this because I don't really know much about rock music. Like you had to tell me who Fleetwood Mac are. Like that's
Mhm.
that's where I'm coming from when it
That's
comes to
how,
like rock.
yeah. How many have you ever listened to a Beatles song like intentionally?
No. Not
No.
unless it was like in a you mean like in a like playing in a on the
Yeah, like
radio or
not
like
it
a
doesn't
store.
count if
Yeah.
like at a restaurant
No.
or
No.
yeah.
And I know this guy in Charlotte named John Tosco, and he does an event where he like hosts, and he loves, like when I say he loves the Beatles, he eat, sleeps, and breathes the Beatles. And he has this
Mhm.
huge music network in Charlotte, and he does really cool shows all the time. And he has
Mhm.
one called Fab Fest, and he keeps trying to get me to come play it because he likes my style. And he's like, you gotta come to Fab Fest and do a song. And I'm like, you want me to do a Beatles song? I was like, like what I'm not gonna rap it. You want me to play it on saxophone? It's like I don't know any Beatles
Yes.
songs. So
Will,
I
I
don't know
need you
how
to
to let him
rap
down.
Yellow Submarine.
That's what I'm saying. And I'm like, I feel like playing it on sax won't really get the same idea. Also, I don't know if I want to. But
Mhm.
anyway, we're here to talk about good and evil. So I guess what are your kind of first, because you know more about rock than I do. What are your kind of your first um I
Well,
guess impressions?
I
Yeah.
I would say that like for me, rock is such a loose general term.
Oh yeah.
Um, this is definitely not in the wheelhouse of music that I spend a lot of time listening to.
Hmm.
It dropped in 2011. The band has since been on a hiatus, and this definitely feels like it fits in this time frame. If not, I would say this. I could picture this album coming out like 3 or 4 years prior. We
When it
were
did.
before talking, we were talking about how much it reminded us of the album Pretty Odd by
Yeah.
Panic at the Disco, one of the few exposures to Rock for Will.
Hmm.
And it definitely feels like it's in that mid, 2000s quirky era.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just not for me. But not that
Understandable.
Tally Hall has done anything wrong here. That genre is just not for me. Because
Yeah.
even by 2008, when Pretty Odd came out, I was already tired of it.
Yeah.
And
And like you had discovered like Red Hot Chili Peppers and bands like that before you discovered like Pretty Odd and like Panic at the Disco, right?
yeah, I was raised more on the
Foo
like
Fighters.
the like classical rock is what my
Hmm.
dad played a lot, like classic metal,
Hmm.
and then turning that into more of just the general alt rock.
Right.
People
Okay.
like Foo Fighters and Red Hot Chili Peppers. Closest to pop I got was like Weezer, which
Okay.
but that's more of where I came from.
And meanwhile, for me, my dad was playing John Legend, Yaheem, um, Charlie Wilson, just
Hmm.
if it was a black R&B singer, he would play it. And I'm
Hmm.
pretty sure like the only reason why I ended up listening to Pretty Odd is because there's no white people on the front of it. So like when my sister put it in the cart at the store, my dad didn't notice and was like, "Oh,
Right.
okay." And we just ended
That's
up with
fine.
the album. It's so, and, that was part of, so it's one of those albums I grew up on. I feel like it's not something I would like turn to like listen to. But like if you ever put on like 9 in the Afternoon or any song from Panic at the Disco from Pretty Odd, I just
Hmm.
know it because it was one of the weird albums that just somehow slipped into the discography. And I love it because of when I discovered it, but it's like, oh, so like did that get you more into this kind of music? It did not.
It did not.
Did not. But I do have some songs from this album that I actually did enjoy.
Uh,
Um,
So yeah, yeah, go tell us some of your high points here with Good and Evil.
my main thing is like it feels like a very happy album. Now, I don't know if that's what they were going for or what people thought of when they, came out with it, but like the instrumentation, because the instrumentation is very similar to Panic at the Disco. And to me, the engineering, I went to see if they used the same engineer and they didn't, but I felt like the engineering style of the way they stack vocals was very
Mhm.
similar to like Silver Sun Pickups, who's someone that I know because of my wife. But basically just kind of not necessarily like the same style as Silver Sun Pickups, but just again the way that they stack the vocals on top of each other to kind of make it sound like a guy is singing with a really big voice. Because like with
Mhm.
Pretty Odd, Brendan Urie didn't really stack his voice a whole lot. It was just kind of him through the middle. On this
Mhm.
album, there's a lot of voice stacking, and that adds to kind of like a whimsical, happy feel. It just kind of feels like someone who's really happy to be in love, maybe a little high. I don't really know, but I just got someone that's like really happy and enjoying themselves. And to me, my top song is You and Me because I really like the chord progression in it. I feel like I heard some diminished
Mm.
chords and some really cool stuff they were doing with the chord patterns and the melodies that they put on top of it. And
Yeah.
again, it was just a happy song, and I was like, I feel joyful. I feel I feel joyful when this is entering my ears.
It put a smile on your face.
Exactly, exactly. I
I
also liked some of the things in Him for a Scarecrow. That was probably my second favorite track on the album.
hmm Oh, okay. What about would you hear on him for a scarecrow?
Kind of the same kind of themes. I think as the track went on, like at first I was like I wasn't really as into it, but as it got on and the way it built up, I like the
Hmm.
engineering behind it, the production behind it, and again, how they built up through the song to kind of give it more emotional resonance. You could feel the
Hmm.
emotions kind of rising through the song. And again, it's a very that's the thing that confused me because like the album is called Good and Evil. So
Hmm.
like I was kind of and when I saw like rock band Good and Evil, I was like, "Oh, this is going to be like intense, heavy bass, heavy kick drum, heavy like just talking like almost like old school Imagine Dragons kind of thing. Just like, like really intense heavy music that was going to be talking about like themes and stuff, and I did not get that from the title. So that's the only thing that confuses me. I'm like, I don't know why it was called Good and Evil because it feels just like good. Like you should have just called it good and that
This
would
is
have
just
fit.
good.
It's just
It's
good.
yeah.
There's no
I don't
evil on this track.
I don't see much evil. And from doing a little bit of research beforehand, it was very funny to me reading fan responses of saying how much edgier this album is compared to their first work and how
So,
much like more serious. And I
did
and
you? Okay.
I I was taken aback because I'm like, what are you talking
I
about
didn't know
here?
that was possible.
This is such a soft like sweet jelly.
Yeah.
This is the Wizard of Oz. This is this
Yeah.
is the land of Oz. Like it's magic. What are you talking about?
And what was the name of their first album?
Their first album, I have it over here, which I feel is much better named for their style, Marvin's Marvelous Mechanical Museum.
Yeah, that fits.
That fits. The
That fits.
alliteration, the M's, the mechanical museum. What does that even mean? I'm way more intrigued than good and evil.
Yeah,
Um,
go ahead.
yeah, plus to the artwork for their album cover is I
A
don't even
little.
get it doesn't feel thematic in any way. It doesn't feel artistically interesting. It feels like somebody's first draft in a Photoshop or an Illustrator
Yeah, like someone turned it in and is
doc.
like, hey, we're gonna make something like this. And then like they get to like, okay, we got the release date. Can someone show me the album art? And then Conception, they were like, hey man, I thought you said that what are you doing? I thought this was like your first draft. And they're like, oh, I forgot to get to it. And it's like, well, too late now.
Yep. Well, it was due a month ago,
Yep,
so
gotta get it out. So
I guess we got to put it out. No. And so, not all genres are for everybody. And I think for myself, I'm at a point where I know you mentioned you like there were some things that musically like you were getting into. I wish I had that. There really wasn't much here that I was getting into myself. And
Hmm.
at that point for me, if I'm not really getting anything lyrically or anything that's like interesting at that point, I start to tune it out. And that's what happened for me at the very end of
Hmm.
this album. Once we hit Turn the Lights Off, which I really did not care for. I really checked out at that point, and the last couple of tracks just kind of blended when I was listening to it. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just it's not for me. I will
Yeah,
say my you know, my favorite track, if I had to pick a high point, would be Cannibal. It was the most
Hannibal was pretty
interesting,
good. Hmm.
and I thought like at least like lyrically and metaphorically, I thought there was more there that like even though I thought they could have gone a little bit deeper, even if that's not their style, I still thought it was pretty decent. There
Hmm.
was at least something more interesting for me there.
Yeah, and like I said, I tend to gravitate because like being a jazz musician, I like sometimes when stuff gets deeper, like most of the time pop songs will use the same four chords. So when I hear a chord that's different, I'm like, oh, cool, like I instantly tune in. But of course, that
Hmm.
doesn't mean I'm going to like automatically love the song. Like, Hey Now You're a Rock Star, that song uses a
Hmm.
diminished chord that many people probably don't know about. But I hate that song so much. There's
Oh,
very
really?
few songs that I hate more than that one. Yes. And we'll have to talk about that on another pod because I absolutely detest it. And Kate will
Oh,
sing it sometimes. My wife's name is Kate, and she will sing it sometimes. And I'll be like, I know you're doing this just to annoy me because I hate that song. So anyway, um, for
wow.
me, so I guess yeah, the high points for me were You and Me, Him for Scarecrow. Um,
Hmm.
for me, as far as like low points go, I feel like I understood this entire album and what it was. Um, and again, to me, this is an album that just kind of makes you happy. You can turn it on if you want to feel some like if you need a smile, turn on this album. Feel
Hmm.
free to. To me, the low point though was Sacred Beast.
Yes.
I don't really get that felt so out of place.
I hate what they did with the vocals.
It
The
felt
way
like
they
it,
mixed those vocals.
yeah, all the heavy auto tune, and it's like in order for auto tune to work, like the more wrong that you sing a note, the more you're gonna hear the auto tune, right?
Hmm.
Because the auto tune's gonna have to work harder to change the note.
Hmm.
But these like Tally Hall, like obviously they can sing, like they have the vocal talent to sing. So it's like to make that much auto tune, I don't know if they like had to purposely sing bad so that way the auto tune could shine through, or if they just stacked so much on it. Either way, it did not sound good. It sounded like it belonged in a video game, like we were on like Sonic the Hedgehog 3 or something like that. It just didn't
It
it didn't
didn't.
fit and it took
Yeah.
me out of the album. Like if that was the first song on this album and I wasn't reviewing it, I probably would have moved on for sure.
And I at least to my knowledge, it wasn't even a part of, say, like a trend of this genre at this time of
Yeah.
including it. So its inclusion didn't even necessarily feel like, oh, well, it's just kind of what people did back then. This just feels
No, yeah.
confusing for his inclusion because I imagine from every other vocal, like there's no other vocalization where I feel like, oh, you just cannot hit notes there. Like, stop. Like,
Right.
you need to, and it doesn't feel like it's used stylistically in a setting that works. Like
Hmm.
like we were saying, everything feels too bubbly and uppity to be needing some kind of auto tune like that, and I don't see it.
Yeah, it's like, and even this era is like, um, it didn't fit like the instrumentation behind it either. Because like this era when this album come out was kind of when like the electronic auto tune music was starting to make a heavy push. I mean, The Energy Never Dies by the Black Eyed Peas had just come out in 2009, and that
Hmm.
was kind of their big switch from like boom bap old school hip hop to like this techno kind of style. So it
Hmm.
was starting to kind of take over. Loop Lasers came out the same year. That's when Lupe had like this techno infused album,
Hmm.
but not like this. it was never done like this. It feels like someone was like, "Hey guys, you want to try some auto tune and just see what happens?" And somehow it slid this way onto the final track list.
Yeah. It reminds me of like early like 3D video games, how they looked like rough because everyone was still figuring out how to make it look good. Maybe
Yeah.
that's what we got here is one of those like we're all figuring we're just trying to play around with auto tune. We want to see if it works here, and it did not.
And I could see like maybe doing that song as like a single, you know,
Hmm.
and just testing it out, see if it does well. But like I said, I'm
Yeah.
just glad that that it was number six instead of number one, because I probably would have been like, I am very sorry to who requested this, but I cannot like, and I'm glad the whole album, I'm glad there was no other track like Sacred Beast on this, because then this would be a totally different discussion.
Yeah, and I think because it's limited to only one, I'm not sure they felt it was the direction that they wanted to
To go.
go.
Yeah.
It's
Maybe it was like a studio or like maybe it wasn't the band's fault, like it was like a studio direction. But like again, that's the only track that I feel like, okay, this is kind of like not just not my style. This doesn't make sense. Because like
this
for
doesn't.
most of the album, it was kind of like, I get it, I like it, kind of, but it's still like
Mhm.
not really my style. Like, I don't know if I'll listen. I might listen to You and Me again. Probably won't listen to the entire album again. But
Mhm.
Sacred Beast is like this doesn't make sense. This is like this is bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although, oddly enough, despite really not enjoying it, it makes me more interested in their first album, just from seeing like
I
fans
feel
talk about how much of a departure, like how more serious this got. I feel like
yeah.
if it dealt like if it was just pure like sugary confection of whimsical, I think I could probably enjoy that more because it's almost indulgent and
Oh,
it's
okay.
way more like, oh
Feels like it
no,
knows what
we're
it is.
yeah, and like I think I could get behind that a little bit more than I could Good and Evil here.
Yeah, like when I saw the critics review, I was looking at it and um it said the album received mixed reviews, with some finding it more mature than its predecessor.
Hmm.
And I was
Hmm.
like, more mature?
More mature.
I didn't know there was a level below that you could ascend from. I
Yeah,
was just like,
just because you use the word cannibal, it doesn't mean
that
that
doesn't.
it's mature, man.
I'm sorry. I'm just like, yeah, it's not like you said, that's a very specific style. But I'm like, as far as this album did not. If you set the mature standard very, very low, then I could see it. But again, you
Hmm.
also got to know who you are as an artist. If you're the kind of artist, like to me, I guess, I don't know if bubblegum pop is the right word, but like, I definitely wouldn't have described it as rock. And I definitely wouldn't have described it as, um, I mean, what are they? Because the official genre listed is alternative rock, indie pop, progressive pop, power pop, and psychedelic rock. And I feel like it sits somewhere right between indie pop and psychedelic rock, but it's definitely got like a bubblegum aspect to it too. But I
Yeah.
may not be using bubblegum right, but just like it gave me a very happy-go-lucky feel. And that's what I
Hmm.
think of when I think of bubble. Like indie pop doesn't always have to have a happy-go-luckiness. Neither does psychedelic rock. Sometimes it can have like deeper themes and emotions and stuff. And I think that also kind of goes to the instrumentation too. Because even if you want to talk about deeper themes, the way that you're writing and producing your songs also have to match. So like if they wanted to make a theme that was more like this talking about good and evil, based upon just the way the tracks sounded,
Hmm.
I I would have missed the lyrics of them talking about good versus evil, because it all sounds like happiness. Like there's no like
Yeah.
dark, deep, ambient, like it's just all happiness. So he could have been like, "Oh
Yeah.
yes, I'm struggling with the evil inside," and I would have been like, "Oh, that's nice," just because he's got like the guitar riff and everything in it. The music lends
Right.
itself to like a very happy, go
Oh
lucky
yeah,
feel.
good for you, champ. I hope it works out.
Yeah, man. I feel that. Go on, King.
Go
Slay.
on, Slay King.
Ah,
I think
um,
I think too something that, you know, back to our original like point of comparison, for this adjacent genre with Pretty Odd, something that I think holds up more with early Panic at the Disco in general is just its willingness to be edgier for better or for
Yeah.
worse. That emo rock era it is kind of like a crystallized time capsule because bands like Panic at the Disco or even like uh oh my goodness, My Chemical Romance were
Hmm.
so willing to be so true to like that emo inspiration that it still lives on in its own unique way. I don't get any of that like serious commitment from here, that it
Hmm.
just kind of feels, I feel like I use this phrase all the time, but it feels kind of toothless.
Toothless.
Like it
Yeah,
just doesn't feel like it
that's right. That's
punctures.
accurate. And again, when you're toothless, when you think of toothless, you think of a baby. When you think of a baby, you don't think of like heavy topics because babies don't have teeth. Like it's it's just kind of it's like milk. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I don't think you're probably not gonna love this. But I just looked up the producer who worked on this album, Tony
Hmm.
Hoffer, and
Hmm.
guess what two albums he worked on?
Oh no.
He
It, ma-
produced
he produced
Carnivorous by Silver Sun Pickups, and he
it's a good
produced
album
Swoon by Silver Sun
by Silver
Pickups.
Sun Pickups.
Yep.
Hey, producers producers can get it wrong sometimes.
So now I've only heard one song by them, and when I heard it, this album reminded me of that song. But based upon those two albums, can you hear like a similar, not necessarily musical style, I just mean like production style, like the way that the vocals were laid out? Can you hear any similarities, or does it still just seem like he went in a completely different direction?
I mean, okay, you bring up Silver Sun Pickups is such a I feel very protected. They're such a special band to me
I
that
know
it
they're great.
feels
They're great.
it
My
feels
wife
very
loves them
difficult
too.
to think of them otherwise. It's hard to say off the
Yeah.
top of my head. I say no, but
Okay.
maybe
And,
if I listened with a
and
more direct comparison, I could hear some.
producers use different styles all the time. Just because someone produces something, doesn't mean that they did it the same way another time. And again, like
Mhm.
for me, like audio engineering, like that's the first thing I look at, like the way I'm thinking about what frequencies are being pulled out of these vocals while I'm listening to the track. And so I'm not gonna say like I feel a little vindicated by picking up on the potential connection that like maybe they worked with some of the same people, because I could tell it wasn't the same style of music, because Silver Sun
Mhm.
Pickups, they have they don't, I wouldn't consider them bubblegum pop. I wouldn't consider them psychedelic rock. Like from the stuff I've heard from them, they can
Right.
talk deeper. I could see them doing something that had more teeth, as you call it. Um, but just from like the technical production standpoint, I was like, this is reminding me of this track. Do you feel he
But
also did, the
but
Kooks, right?
yeah, I was about to say I'm looking at his like work. I feel
Mm-hmm.
way more inspiration from say the Kooks or
Okay.
even more modern Dirty Heads.
Really? Modern Dirty Heads?
He
He
produced Bum Bum
bum bum
by Dirty Heads.
bum bum.
Bum Bum.
Okay. I think that was the song. That might have been where That's All I Need came from. I can't remember. But I mean, That's All I Need is very happy. And that's like reggae, and that's very different away from them. But like even Dirty Heads, like, they have songs that are very deep, that are ambient, and because I've seen them live before. Um, so they I could see them going a whole different range of styles. From this album, I could not see this band in particular doing their styles. And if you know your niche, you know your niche.
Hmm.
But that's just kind of what I got. So more similar to the Kooks, I could see, um, like you said, just from not a musical standpoint, but a musical production standpoint, I can see similarities between them and the Kooks because I know a couple of their songs as well.
But I mean, he's also produced albums for Depeche Mode.
And El King, and so he's been by Echo Smith. No, Echo Smith. I don't know who that is. I
Beck.
thought that was Aerosmith. Beck. I was gonna say. I was like, that one's a little interesting because Beck is,
He
like
did a
you want to talk
song.
about teeth,
Oh,
music with teeth. Beck is your guy.
he produced a song by Foster the People. I hear that big time.
Oh
The
yeah.
people who did
Okay.
uh All the pumped up kicks. I
Okay.
had to sing it for a second. But
I
yeah.
don't know that one, but I feel you. I kind of
Oh,
feel
you would know.
like this album, like if you're anyone's watching The Voice right now, it's so funny because they have two country artists on there right now with Reba McEntire and Dan and Shay. And all these country artists come in from like Nashville and South Carolina and stuff to sing. And Reba's like, "Oh, you sang that Blake Shelton song and I loved it and I felt it in my heart." And then when it's Chance's turn to comment on it, he's like, "I don't really know the song, but you held the microphone while you sang, and I thought that was cool." And it just kind of moves on. And like that's how I feel with this music.
It's like in class where you're told to like, okay, find something constructive and nice to say about the presenter. It's like,
Right?
I liked the way you held the microphone. That
Yeah.
was pretty good.
I mean, you can tell they did a good job singing, but it's like you can tell, like, and it's always so funny. It was more funny, I feel like, when Blake Shelton was on the show because he would just stare at Chance. But either way, um,
Hmm.
so yeah, I guess. Oh yeah, he did a couple of things by Beck. So it's very, and I feel like this is another interesting part too because now if I wish I had asked my wife about it too because she was listening to it with me, and she knows probably both of those albums by the Kooks and Silver Sun Pickups, um, but being able to tune into like different production styles and things that you can hear within different artists, I feel like is very cool. So again,
Hmm.
thank you for the submission, and I am
Yeah.
still glad that I listened to this album, if I can make that clear. I don't,
Hmm.
we've never regretted anything that we've listened to or been like, ah, that was a waste of time.
Hmm.
So yeah, I enjoyed the parts that I was able to listen to. And yeah, I think do you have any closing thoughts on Good and Evil?
Yes, our opinions do not validate or invalidate your own opinions. If you love this, I'm so happy you love this.
And if you
Like
did,
this is great. And if you didn't, that's why conversations exist. So we
right.
can talk about things we like, we don't like, we learn about each other. It's beautiful.
And if you did love it, or if there was something on it that you feel like we missed that would have made us love it more, tell us and let us know.
Mhm.
Please write it down in the comments. I think on Spotify you can drop the poll option to send a Q&A. Tell us your thoughts because again, these are not the correct thoughts. These are just our thoughts, but we love talking about them because we love talking about music.
Mhm.
So until next time, guys, again, remember to like and subscribe. Keep sending in submissions. Um, ooh, are we gonna do we have an album ready for next week?
I'm not sure if we do.
I'm not sure. I'm almost like kind of want to put it to a vote because I'm like, because we talked about doing Beyonce's new album and we haven't got a chance to do that. But then
Mhm.
Taylor Swift just released the album.
Mm,
But I don't really listen to Taylor Swift, so I don't really feel what's the word?
confident?
Not confident.
Qualified?
Qualified. Thank you. I don't feel qualified to talk on it compared to her work. So maybe I'll just post a poll to see what people would rather hear us talk about. Or maybe Kendrick will finally respond and that will give us our content for next week.
I was about to say I feel like that's gonna happen regardless.
Yep, so probably so. But thank you guys again so much for listening and for tuning in with us. Again, like, subscribe, follow, all of the above, and we will see you next time.
Take care of yourselves.